Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wowhead Weekly number 233. I almost missed the number then, but yeah, 233 it is. I am Annie, or also known as Annie Fuchsia, and I can normally be found on Twitch playing a lot of World of Warcraft streaming, and I'm also here weekly for the Wowhead Show. With me, as always, is my lovely co host, Perculia.
Hey everyone, I'm Perk. I run Wowhead. I oversee all the news and guides and features on the site. Sometimes I'm joined with a cat. He was here before the show, but he ran off. So maybe he'll be back later. And we recently moved our show to Mondays, and thanks everyone for joining us at the new time, new day. We really appreciate it. And yeah, we have a new zone finally on the Shadowlands Alpha. We have some profession updates, some tour guest updates, and we even have another canceled event, and we might even have a cat joining us. He's back.
Oh,
Yeah.
Brightpaw making a visit.
Yep.
And he's gone. And he's
he's
gone.
sitting he's sitting right next to the laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to pull my microphone wire apart.
Yep. So, about canceled events, let's first say that we mentioned this event last week. We had some speculations of what might be mentioned. One of the main speculations that we had was that it would perhaps include a release date for Shadowlands. And the fact that this event is cancelled probably implies even more that it is indeed a release date, but that Blizzard decided that maybe it's not the correct time to announce it as exciting news on social media because of everything else that's going on in the world right now. Brightpaw is actually here.
Yes.
He actually came
And
back.
yes, he actually came back.
He actually came back.
Um, but yeah, I had some thoughts I wanted to say about the tone of the announcement, but before
Let
that,
me show
I
it.
saw,
Yep.
yeah, I saw a lot of discussion where people were like, "Wow, is why is Wowhood calling this an event? Like it's just a live stream, and like I bet it's not going to be big." So just to dive into that, like normally we don't get live streams with like the game director of WoW, um, and like the executive producer, and it's not simultaneously streamed on Twitch and YouTube, and it just seemed really big, and it just seemed like it wasn't just going to be like Ian plays WoW for an hour. Like every time there's an interview that's not really hype, we learn something new. So for this to be so hyped up, it feels like something big was going to happen
Mm-hmm.
with it. And
Mm-hmm.
because of the pandemic, everything is online. It's like, well, yeah, it's like a big stream. Like this is an event. This is like an announcement event. Like
Yeah.
they announce stuff in general.
Mm-hmm. Like this
So
is as
that's
close
why,
to an event, like
yeah,
an announcement event that we could get in times as we have at the moment. And the way that it was talked about with all the important people being involved sounded a lot more important than, for example, a dev joining a stream for an interview. So it definitely did sound like there was more tied to it, perhaps a Shadowlands release date, for example. Um, but yeah, you wanted to mention the tone of the message,
yeah.
and
So
I'll show
Annie
it
is
here.
showing. So Annie is showing what Blizzard tweeted out and what they added to their uh live blog, and I mean it makes sense for several reasons why they did this, but they don't actually say what they're listening towards, and that is Black Lives Matter. And when you look at all of Blizzard's social media, this is the only Blizzard game property that is even alluding to the movement. And when you look at Activision's statement, a lot of people were kind of criticizing it because it was one of the sort of worst, most fake statements out of game companies, with no mention of like donations or how they could handle racism in their games chat or esports streams or community service days or donations. It was just very much like thoughts and prayers, very, very vague. So the tone of this message, I feel, didn't quite sit well with me because uh, I think it was the right time not to say anything, but without giving any specifics, it seemed like more of a PR grab. Like they were more concerned with the release date not going viral as opposed to direct action they could take.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that their statement maybe could have been backed up with like an actual post that Blizzard as a company made or Activision was making as to steps they were going to take, like many other game companies, like like EA said things, Microsoft said things, Square Enix said things. Lots of other companies have been trying to say something about specifics that they will do. So I feel like the maybe the message by itself, if Blizzard had a more detailed statement, would have been okay. But I think it caused a lot of controversy because they did not by itself as like the one thing sort of vaguely alluding to Black Lives Matter by itself. It sort of gave off like, okay, but like, do you care? Is this just like PR? What about Hong Kong? It was this sort of very confusing thing, and they could have said a bit more like other places.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's just my thoughts on that. Hopefully they're putting together a larger statement from their PR team, like some of the other companies have done. But yeah, I just found that pretty interesting, especially how other Activision properties like Call of Duty have been talking about specific things they were going to do to address like chat and their communities and making changes to loading screens. So I thought maybe with this message, Blizzard would have taken some concrete steps as well. So
Right, that's
here
interesting.
is
So it is touched on by the Call of Duty team, but it's just not by the Blizzard team.
yeah, like the studio behind Call of Duty
Mm-hmm.
was talking about making some changes.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly they were able to do some, they were clearly okay making some changes on their own outside of the parent company statement.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have thought there
Mm-hmm.
would have been a bigger thing on Blizzard's side as well, because we're sort of in this like weird limbo of like,
Mm-hmm.
well, Blizzard is handling this differently than Hong Kong, but on the flip side, they're also not really, you know, it just is like a lot of words. They're not really doing action, and oh, cynically, oh, they're just doing this so their release date or their new announcement can go more viral when there's less news. So it's this weird statement in the middle where it's sort of confusing a lot
Yeah,
of people. So
I feel like it's one of those really sensitive things that can go
yeah.
like both ways, because one could argue that companies who are saying something more specific are also doing it for just PR reasons. So it's a very like it is
Yeah.
interesting though that it's because they I think they said something about voices being heard rather than specifying like the Black Lives Matter movement. Um, but yeah, I think as a big company, especially knowing that there's people all over the world who play your game, and especially after people lost the feeling of wholesomeness after all those people were fired last year, then
Hmm.
maybe it would have been nice if there was something mentioned about maybe extra hiring or something in the whole context. Maybe that could have also been a bit
Yeah.
more nicer
And
to
like
hear.
I feel like a lot of some game companies, like, they don't, their messaging could have been better, or when you see the donation amount and their profits, you're like, oh, that number is like actually pretty small. But at least that's creating some change, even
Hmm.
if that's PR. Like
Giving it a
being
bit of
quiet, like
voice, a
being
bit
like,
of
oh
awareness.
yeah. Like I don't really think this, like, the statement really did much besides, delay the event and get people talking about the event on Twitter,
Hmm.
getting those engagement metrics up.
Hmm.
But at least, if another company is like, we're donating to these organizations, or we're going to take a look why,
Hmm.
we don't hire like minorities and women and all these
Hmm.
other things. Even if
Hmm.
that is motivated by PR and profits, it's helping, the community in
Yeah,
general.
no, it's very true. If the
Yeah.
pure statement is only about delaying an event, then it does become a thing of like, oh, people won't be so happy with our news right now, so we should delay it. Um, then to at least contrast that and put in a bit more effort, then it could be good to highlight minorities and see what can potentially be done to help as well with direct things such as hiring, or maybe just with spreading information, spreading knowledge, and spreading ways for
Yeah.
people to like educate themselves on the matter.
Yeah, and there's been like so many, like, chat in, streams or their own events hasn't been great, like there's so many like inappropriate or like racist names that can happen in game. Like sometimes people will send us something to highlight, like here's a cool community thing, and I'm just like, oh, like that general chat and like that name of that guildmate. It's like there's so many cringe things that it feels like this could be a good opportunity to be like, hey, we're gonna try to actually clean up some of the,
Mm-hmm.
we have systems to deal with inappropriate, like rude, racist, or sexist names. Like this could be an opportunity to improve our systems.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's just like
Mm-hmm.
so much of that
Mm-hmm.
that you sort of see around the social part of the gaming community, whether it's serious or like we're trying to be, edgy and half funny, but we're really not.
Mm-hmm.
So, um,
I do think if you
but
compare
yeah.
different type of games with each other, I do feel that WoW not being, if you compare it to shooters, for example, like CS:GO,
Mhm.
I do feel like minorities have a better time in an RPG game like World of Warcraft compared to like a hectic, very competitive CS:GO kind of scene. For example, like being female. I think being female in WoW is a lot easier than being a female jumping into a competitive game with your voice activation and everything.
Yeah, but like
Um,
like Overwatch, for example, could have like
Overwatch, true,
Overwatch has just been like
true.
quiet. So I feel
Oh yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
WoW being
Yeah,
the only place being like, hey, we're delaying this event for reasons. It's like, okay, well,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
maybe Hearthstone could say something, or Overwatch, or I don't know, StarCraft. Like it just seems, I don't know if Blizzard has so many layers of PR that it takes forever for them to make a statement, similar to how the Hong Kong thing was like
That was
really
also really
botched and
delayed. Yeah.
confused.
Mm.
But it's definitely something that a lot of people have been.
Mm-hmm.
I know I saw a lot of people being like, oh, so like it's okay that WoW's statement was vague. Like, Activision Blizzard, wrote this big thing. Then you're like, oh no, we got that mixed up with another company.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I didn't say that because WoW
yeah,
is doing a bit better than other games. It means that they
right,
shouldn't put emphasis on those things. Of course
yeah,
not. No, it was more of like it was more of a realization right now that WoW does actually have a somewhat of a better atmosphere. I think, generally speaking, my own experience compared to the competitive games. But it's not really relevant to like right now's topic. It was just something I thought about.
no, I think that's a good observation as well. Like, like
Observation,
also the
that's the
woman.
word. It was a
Yeah,
random observation that I just
yeah.
realized. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, I don't think it's fair for Blizzard for us to be like, oh, like WoW must like perfectly address the system, because like there are other Blizzard games in these genres you're talking about, and
Mm-hmm.
you know it could maybe make more sense for them to send something, but they're not saying anything.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
uh, but yeah, fingers crossed that with the event they don't have to plan this week. They can maybe put some of their resources into um
Mm-hmm.
thinking about long-term change, or a
Mm-hmm.
better statement besides, like one sentence in white on black text instead.
Mm-hmm. And one more thing, which we can
Yeah.
have as the um, final thought here, is I think it could have been very, very fitting as well for Blizzard to come out and put focus on the fact that, not focus, but reminding people of the customizations which will be available in Shadowlands, because that will also highlight and make people feel more at home, being able to make the characters look like themselves with the different skin colors and hairstyles and eye colors, eye shapes, and all that stuff. Like I think it could have also been put into light in that sense too, saying that everything matters, like even in the games that we play,
Yeah, I think
everyone
that's a great
matters.
point, because there hasn't been too much official communication about that. And, Wowhead is always out there highlighting these options, and we get so many ugly comments whenever we post about these things. And people have gotten even worse. Like, if we data mine an option a month ago and it's not in the dressing room yet, we get comments being like, Blizzard came to their senses and, deleted this horrible option. And it's been a ridiculous amount of work for our moderators ever since all this came out. And I feel like we're kind of like doing a lot of the heavy lifting, trying to spread the word on these options, while Blizzard
That
has
is,
been more
yeah.
quiet with like this one blog. So I feel like if
Mm-hmm.
they did more blogs, highlighting these options, and celebrating them, it would be a healthier space.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the more I think about it, actually, this is something that maybe people in the community in general can do, using these new models and new skin colors and new everything to make like your own characters, to like represent yourself or represent someone that you want to make up. Can imagine it's a Sims character basically, just to make like loads of different kinds of people out of like in the dressing room, for example, because that's actually a good point that you made. I think all these Wowhead posts that are mentioning all the new colors being added to the game, they've heated up a lot of very, I guess, like racist conversations.
Yeah.
And I think that could be one way of sort of opening the topic to be like, hey, this is actually important, like there's people getting hurt by these kind of topics, and it's not okay.
Yeah, and I also think that with the event council tomorrow, we were just saying we hope that Blizzard, is taking the time to put together a statement instead. Instead of checking into Twitter to see what Wowhead's going to be live tweeting on this event, or refreshing the news, take this time to actually listen to other voices, educate, donate, sign petitions. Blizzard purposely didn't do this event because they said they wanted to listen, even if they didn't call out the movement by name. So use that time for good, and listen, like Blizzard was saying. So 9 a.m. tomorrow. That is when the event was meant to be, Pacific time.
Wowhead is not doing anything instead, right?
We may be highlighting some things, some resources you can use at that point. And we were working on a Pride Pin fundraiser, I think, for next week, and we're going to see if we can maybe split donations different ways. I'm not sure because like that takes a while to set up, but since that's not public out there yet, we're going to see if we can maybe split donations to like 2 or 3 organizations as opposed to the one we were thinking of originally, like months ago. So yeah.
So those World of Warcraft plans were cancelled, and we don't know yet until when or for when. It might be a week, it might be weeks. Do you have any idea of when you think it might be?
I think it's definitely gonna be a few weeks later. Like if it was so soon, I feel they would have said something. And Ardenweald came out this week, and maybe they wanted this, whatever the event stream was.
I think it was meant to cover Ardenweald too. Yeah.
So maybe, and like there's always like a gap between zones, so maybe this event will now occur when Maldraxxus is meant to open.
Good point.
So it could be that. I don't think it's going to be delayed months though, because we also have that novel Shadows Rising coming out, and I think it would be weird if we had a prequel novel coming out before we knew like stuff was hidden. Like who knows? Maybe there's like a transition cinematic tied to this event, like there was with Gul'dan and Illidan at Gamescom. There could be an important story link in there that we need to see before the pre-patch happens, or this prequel novel happens. So my guess would be like late June. But
okay, so maybe like 2 or 3 weeks. Be wrong.
Yeah, I whenever they're gonna do Maldraxxus. Also, like we haven't seen anything with legendaries and soulbinds yet, so I feel like the presentation would sort of be when that's gonna happen, because
that's gonna be big.
I don't think people remember what soulbinds are.
Yeah, like, yeah.
Or like, oh, there are legendaries in Torghast, and they're actual legendaries. We haven't seen anything about them yet, and they're awesome for profession crafters, but we haven't seen anything about them yet.
Ardenweald was the 3rd zone, right?
Yeah, so it's the 3rd leveling zone. We also had the city of Oribos, which just opened, but that's like still a work in progress. I think we only have 3 out of the 10 dungeons open for testing. There's been no rate testing, and the 10th Castle Nathria boss is just like not in the dungeon journal, so we're like, okay, is there like not a boss? And then of course there is the Maw, which is the zone that feeds into Torghast. And I think that has to be like really important to test because people are just like chain running Torghast, and it's like so easy. You can swap characters and covenants, but on when the game comes out, you're going to need to do stuff in the mall to get the currency to go into it. So that's like a really, even though it's not like a big, leveling story zone, it's a very important zone to test.
Mm-hmm. The zone before
So
Ardenweald, how long was that ago?
I will Google that right now. Revendreth. Uh, wow. That was April 24th.
So just about 2 weeks ish, 2 weeks and a half, maybe.
Well, actually, like a month, actually,
Oh my god,
because
I
that
was
was
thinking
April,
May
not May.
24th. Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. Okay, so it's like a month and a half.
yeah.
Um,
But Bastion was like 2 weeks before that. So it
okay,
was
so it
like
was a
Bastion,
long,
then two
yeah.
weeks Revendreth, and then like a month and a week Ardenweald. So, uh, I think
Mm-hmm.
Maldraxxus is farther along though because like we were data mining NPCs from Maldraxxus in the first week, and like the Bastion story is tied to Maldraxxus, so I feel like maybe that is like easier to put together, or like more farther along than we would have thought. But
Mm-hmm.
we'll see soon.
Mm-hmm.
But my guess would be late June for when we will actually see more information on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And whenever this event is, now we can almost certainly say that it will give us the Shadowlands release date.
Yeah, especially because I mean we're as we get farther and farther into this, we run out of you know
Time. Mm-hmm.
yeah, Shadowlands quarter 4 keeps getting closer and
Mm-hmm.
closer. So, um, even if they weren't planning on announcing a release date, if it gets pushed, far back enough, then they sort of have to put the release date in there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Like even if it wasn't
yeah,
planned, like now it has to be planned.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, let's discuss Ardenweald a bit because that
Mm-hmm.
just opened and it's like amazingly beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It is. And we also have some updates on Ysera's story.
Yeah, so we played through so Ardenweald is this sort of magical well, they're all magical lands. But Ardenweald is the zone that is tied more to the Emerald Dream. It looks very much like Val Shara from Legion. The Covenant there is the Night Fae. There are like dream trees, there are spirits of nature, um, and there is also some quests involving Ysera.
Yeah.
So the every zone handles anima and their spirits differently,
Mm-hmm.
and in Ardenweald, well, there are things called wild seeds, and that's where the souls that are being prepared to go to rebirth are stored in. Um, the wild seed tied to Ysera, the dreamer, has been very restless. And that's because Ysera's spirit has been unable to find peace, and it's reliving its last moments of life when it was corrupted by Xavius and then was attacking the Temple of Elune.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you actually do a bunch of quests that see what Ysera has been thinking. You learn about like all the torment she went through, even like very early on, like Deathwing betraying her, feeling like she let Turon down, her daughter Merithria down, putting Malfurion down, and it culminates in us going back to that Val Shara quest, but from the point of view of corrupted Ysera trying to kill everyone at the Temple of Elune.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's really powerful because that was the scenario. Like it was so sad doing that, and there was that really sad
Yeah.
cinematic after that, and now
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing it from her perspective, where it ends when Turon finally kills Ysera.
Mm-hmm.
But the story doesn't end there. but I don't know if it's intended or a bug. But right now things crash after that Ysera quest on the alpha. So there's two more Ardenweald chapters after that we can't do.
Oh, and
But
okay. Mm-hmm.
it's assumed that she's going to uh wake up from the wild seed because, we've data mined that model of her with the death eyes. And we haven't touched on a lot of the Night Warrior story yet, so we assume that's going to play a role as well. Most of the questing so far has been about like understanding the wild seeds and the animals different spirits come back from, and Ysera, and what the Druids from Battle for Azeroth are up to in the zone as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if Ysera wakes up and if Tehran plays a larger role in the zone in the future.
Mm-hmm. I think with how much
Um,
Tyrande was kind of left in the shadows in BFA, it could be interesting to see her in this story as well, in
Yeah, especially
Shadowlands.
because she was the one that dealt the final blow,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and the devs kept hyping up that her story will finally get its due.
Yeah.
Will be like really sad. I wonder if it was crashing at that point. Like maybe wouldn't it be cool if there was a cinematic like the Val Shara one, but from like the point of view of
Different.
Ysera?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we
Like
do have two more
she,
chapters, so we could maybe see.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like we see her like ascending as this constellation into the sky, and like it'd be cool from her perspective. We see like the corruption just like leaving her eyes, and I don't know how she wakes up
Mm,
in the Shadowlands. I think that would be cool.
that would be really cool. Could imagine visually
uh
too.
yeah, there was this other little interesting detail that I'm sure we'll learn more very soon, but it's fun to speculate. uh Let me I'm trying to find the
The
exact
line.
text. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, the inhabitants of Ardenweald have commented that Ysera was within the last group to arrive before the drought began, and that is referring to the animus shortage and all the souls being automatically sent to the maw.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting chronologically, because that means that all the people who died at the start of Legion on the Broken Shore, like Varian and Tyrion, they were not sent to the Maw if Ysera wasn't sent to the Maw. And
Yeah.
then it makes us think, well,
Mm-hmm.
what happened? And then she was within the last group. So it's like, well, what could have happened
Yeah. What
right
happened after
after her
that?
death?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, was that the events of Stormheim? Because, we saw Sylvanas making a deal with Helya. Um, did Sylvanas turn to this once Gen broke her lantern, was like her lantern one plan, and then with that breaking she turned to this other plan? Is this tied to how Helya just came back in the Trial of Valor in 7.1?
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting how like it's narrowing down the time frame.
Mm-hmm.
uh and then you're sort of like I mean, or it could be like, was the deal already in place, but like Elune intervened and saved Ysera from going there. All really interesting. I mean, I'm sure knowing that exact moment will be a big reveal that they're gonna save for like a
Mm-hmm.
cinematic, or the
Mm-hmm.
initial, oh my god, we're stuck in the maw and fighting our way out moment.
Mm-hmm. Maybe this event will also, or this moment of time, maybe also specifies a change in Sylvanas herself. A lot of people felt like Sylvanas changed so much and they don't really know what happened, or she became so powerful. Maybe this moment in time of whatever happened there is pinpointing when that change also happened.
Yeah, I do feel that in like the Legion intro cinematic is meant to look like really heroic, how her and Varian were, working
Fighting the
together.
same enemies. Mm-hmm.
And obviously we knew that she was talking to the jailer before this, but uh, maybe Broken Shore didn't go her way. Her, trying to get this lantern essence from Ayr and immortality for the Forsaken, that didn't go her way. So maybe she just was like, okay, like I'm, you know, even committing more fully to the
Mm-hmm.
jailer now, and
Mm-hmm.
she realized that she had to all the other avenues planned she had were not as good as um you know
Mm-hmm.
really escalating the jailer's plan instead, because I did think at the start of Legion, like even at the start of Stormheim, she kept saying like she was really worried about the Forsaken because they couldn't reproduce and she didn't want them to like die off or be stuck in this tormented place that she went to, and that's why she was trying to uh learn about the Valkyrie and immortality. And it does seem really strange how he went from that to like the Horde is nothing, I don't care about the
Yeah.
Forsaken.
Yeah.
It feels like maybe something was like her breaking point in early Legion where she's like, I give up, I'm just gonna go along with the jailer, like everything else is not working.
Mm-hmm. Wait, when did her and the jailer start talking? Do we know?
Apparently there was a short story at the end of Wrath of the Lich King where she tried to commit suicide and she got sent to this really weird place, and like a voice was telling her to live, and the Valkyrie were going to bind themselves to her. We learned at BlizzCon like that was her first interaction with the jailer and the start of the
Mm.
deal. People were like, "Oh, is this retconned?" I'm not sure, but it seems like things were like very moving very slow at the start, and now they've like really started to escalate with her power, because like she didn't seem super powerful in
No, exactly.
Mop or warlords. Um, and then the jailer uh being involved in the whispers to Vol'jin was
Yeah, exactly. With
you
her
know
becoming war chief, then I think, or I guess then everything just escalated and went on super speed to whatever the goal was.
yeah, or it's like, okay, well, maybe she felt that if this was in Stormheim, maybe it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm trying this thing with the jailer, I'm working with Talia, but let me see if I can do my own thing and get immortality with my people with this lantern. And then it's like, okay, well, that got foiled with Gen, so yeah, I'll just go full in on the jailer's plans instead.
Mm-hmm.
um but yeah, interesting to know that exact moment, and really curious to see what's going to happen once Ysera awakens and Turon's part in the story really sort of increases as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also a really beautiful zone. It's so
It
pretty.
is. It is. Very, a lot of
So
nature. So I can imagine you as a night elf loving this
yeah,
area.
there's not too many cats. I feel cat models in Shadowlands yet, so I feel
It's
like
not too late, Blizzard. Add some
we
more
need like a
cats.
wild seed that turns into a cat.
Need some more cats.
So, also a small event that was canceled last week was there was meant to be an interview on Torghast, and that wasn't
Oh, was
that did
that the
not
interview
happen.
that we mentioned on the show?
Yeah, so
Oh,
that
that one
didn't
didn't
happen.
happen.
That was with Sloot and Paul Cubitt. Similar reasons, they didn't feel it was the right time
Okay.
to do or say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they wanted that interview at that time to go ahead of the build, because the build addressed a lot of Torghast feedback over the past few weeks. So I think they wanted to explain those changes, but of course, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So uh, for starters, all classes can now test Torghast.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the major change was the soft timers. Like we've talked about this, there was a lot of controversy with it, and people did not like the idea of Torghast having timers.
Yeah.
So they torments no longer scale with time. Torments are now addition challenges based on the floor types you have encountered. Um, and in addition to this, they also started testing out the cosmetic only mode, because they mentioned that like a few weeks ago how maybe they were going to do like one type of Torghast for that was like limited for
Proper
your
play.
legendary
Mm-hmm.
crafting stuff, and then they made maybe like another mode that you could run uh more frequently.
Mm-hmm. Like imagine today's horrific visions where you can run one way, which is how it is right now on live, and one way where it doesn't cost you vessels, but you also don't get sockets or you don't get the mementos and similar. Instead, you just go in for the experience itself, or potentially some vanity or cosmetic items.
Yeah, also this is a little confusing on the alpha. Maybe Blizzard wanted to handle this as well. But currently on the alpha, if you complete something quickly, you get a message popping up being like, you have extra rewards in your chest. Um, and that was confusing because it's like we remove timers, but we are rewarding you for doing
Oh.
something with a timer.
Mm-hmm.
That is like something that's out of date that should be ignored when you're
Gotcha.
leaving feedback.
Good to know.
That's not like their current vision of the game currently.
So the idea of a timer in Torghast is currently just gone
Yeah,
for now. I mean, things can of course still change, but that's interesting because that's what most of the feedback was saying, that it doesn't feel right that there's a timer for it. Um, it does feel like there should maybe be something because otherwise people just sit there, pop all CDs and then just
right.
wait because you're not punished for taking things slow. But yeah, for now it seems like the timers are gone, and maybe if they think of something more creative later, I'm sure we will see it in the testing.
Yeah, the dev notes were we've heard your feedback that
Mm-hmm.
torments were adding too much time pressure. The jailer may still torment you on higher levels, but torments will not scale with time. So it seems like
Yeah.
other stuff will be there to
Mm-hmm.
incentivize you to keep moving, um,
Okay.
but not this scaling with time
I see
mechanic.
a comment in chat. They need to stop the idea of timing stuff. Timing should be a competitive aspect, community driven. That's also a very good point. As long as there is a timer of some sort that just lists it, even though it doesn't give you any kind of reward, that could actually be enough just for people to want to push themselves for next time. If I notice that, oh, this took me 37 minutes, then maybe next time I would have. Yeah, you can actually use add-ons for that. That's a good point. So even if they don't
Yeah,
implement it.
one thing we've been covering a lot, like on Wowhead, is sort of classic and speedrunning,
Mm-hmm.
and like people will. There's so many like just add-ons across games for how like the speedrunning community is, um, and like how fast can you get something done in one sitting. So something like AFKing for your cooldowns would obviously not be good for a speedrun if
Yeah.
you're trying to do things really fast.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
So,
Uh, a question in the
um,
chat. I'll try to just take question or statements that I see in the chat to
okay,
for us
yeah.
to go into when it's relevant, since we don't have
Mhm.
anyone to or we don't have Sass who would
I
normally
did
write things
actually
down.
text and call him, but he
That's
didn't get
okay.
back to me.
That's
So,
okay. We're experienced hosting this, right, Perk? We can
yep.
do this. Can you go into Torghast instead of doing PvP, Mythic Plus, or raids to get more powerful, or is it something you do in addition to those things? So if you look at how horrific visions are now, my idea, or I think what the idea is, that it will be something similar. It'll be in addition to, and what has been specified is that they will be used in order to get legendaries. I'm not sure if the legendaries will have an additional way of completing them in raids as well. Do you know that perk?
So, well, as a disclaimer, the legendary system seems really important, but none of it's up for testing yet on the
Mm-hmm.
alpha. So I feel like this is sort of I don't want
Still in
legendaries
talks. Yeah.
to be like the Azerite of Shadowlands, where they just sort of appear right before,
Yeah.
things go
Yeah.
live. But how I understand it is that Torghast is tied to getting components for your legendary, and uh, people that have crafting professions will craft other reagents that are needed for the legendary, so those crafters will feel valuable throughout the expansion.
Okay. So yay for
Um,
professions. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, I don't believe you can do legendaries in raids. But the whole like Mythic Plus, World Boss, PvP, all those weekly chests, those are getting tweaked so you can, instead of, getting like a random RNG item that's Titan Forge in the slot you already have, you have more choice in determining the reward you want from all these weekly systems. Um, and Torghast, I believe, doesn't give you alternate progression like gear you can buy, although, of course, no rewards are actually available in Torghast to test. But I believe that it's just the legendary components, and then the actual armor you wear, aside from the legendary, is from other systems.
Mm-hmm. So you'll probably find yourself still raiding, mythic plussing, and PvPing if you want all the different sources. Although I think, wasn't there a comment about how you're going to be able to have a bit more freedom with deciding if you want to spam more
Yeah.
mythic plus, you can do that instead of doing PvP, or vice
Yeah,
versa?
and PvP has the vendor now as well, so as well as an upgrade vendor for PvP gear. So
Mm-hmm.
that seems like if you want PvP gear, you will perhaps like waste less time with rewards you don't want.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, but I really feel that it's great they keep introducing all these like anima powers and addressing feedback about timers. But like I'm just like really curious to know what's going on with legendaries and the actual rewards. Like I know achievements are things that usually put at the end of development, but like those Mage Tower appearances, like they were data mined in early Legion Alpha, even though they weren't added until 7.2. So like if you want a reward to be awesome, you should probably start thinking about it earlier than
Oh yeah,
later.
for sure.
So it's not just like, oh, like you can have a reskin Mountain Torghast. it should be more hype.
Mm-hmm. Yep, yep.
So yeah, that is what's up with Torghast. We also had interesting profession updates. I feel like the professions we know more about the gear than some of the other systems in Shadowlands.
Mm-hmm. I have a
So,
screenshot here
yep.
of how it looked like in the profession. This is an example of a cloth piece. And as you can see, in case you missed, the profession is giving you options with different regents or reagents, different mats that you need for different things. And you have the options of increase item level, specify a secondary stat, and bonus effect. And what is new now is that an additional slot for secondary stat has been added.
Right, which people are really excited about because remember Warlords, how the secondary stats were just RNG combos and you have to make like so many items to get the one you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
This removes the RNG. You can now specify both secondary stats you will get on an item. So
Mm-hmm.
people are really happy with that.
I mean, you mentioned warlords, but it's like that still today, right? Like with tailoring,
Yeah.
I have been crafting a lot of bracers to then scrap just to be able to craft all the legs and all the gloves that I need until I get
Yeah.
the right stats.
Yeah. I remember in Warlords it got especially
Yeah,
and
no,
I
I
guess whenever it blew
remember.
up it got
Yeah.
especially bad. And now like that was sort of like, oh, now the system is just here to stay. Yay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um And another thing they did is that, like you saw in the screenshots, there are other things you can socket besides secondary stats. And these are different bonuses. And before, I don't know if Blizzard wanted to go like too elaborate or they realized, but it seemed like there were different bonuses and different slots would give you that bonus. So like a helm would maybe like increase your you could use the helm to increase like flask effects, but the boots would improve like movement speed. And
Mm-hmm.
it I think I don't know if they were trying to like be like super inspired by classic, but for whatever reason they simplified it so any slot will let you apply any bonus effect. It's not limited by like, oh, feet are only movement speed. Like you could put movement speed in your helm if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and they also got rid of, I think, some of the effects that I think could maybe be like not exploited, but could lead to like people obsessing over them for certain encounters. Like they removed all the effects that were like bonus damage against giants or like bonus damage against humanoids or like thorn damage, flat damage
Yeah.
procs, things that you could see someone being like, I'm going to craft like a whole,
Like,
giant slaying crafted armor set for like this one boss.
yeah.
So they
We
removed
keep
a lot of
swapping.
those. Yeah, kind of like the benthic armor, how
Mm-hmm.
like the one effect is amazing, so you want like benthic armor for that one boss.
Mm-hmm.
um So they changed the bonuses. They added a few of them. They were kind of interesting. Like there's one that increases the wearer's primary stat for completing world quests. Uh, or
Mm.
a reagent that adds a socket, which I think people will like because like no more RNG. You can just
Yeah.
put the socket.
So when it says bonus effects, it's not RNG. You pick which bonus effect
No,
you want.
yeah, the different crafters can make different types of these optional reagents, and then you pick and choose what to stick in for like a guaranteed bonus effect.
Mm.
Or like
And
another one they just add. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. Mine is general comments.
Uh, I was gonna say another one they added was you get your well-fed buff when you die in an arena or battleground. So I think between that one and the World Quest one, it's sort of incentivizing you to do different types of content to make it seem more convenient. So
Mm.
like you're not having you like farm food or world quests are boring, but you're getting a nice stat buff for it.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of the other things are like falling damage, run speed, swim speed, flask effects, more stuff like that, as opposed to these damage procs or damage against specific mobs.
What I was going to say was I think it's an interesting point made in chat about how, or more, not really a point, but more a question of how long these type of gears will actually be relevant. And if we look at this screenshot, it is a blue item. We will probably see epic items too, because that's something that we have seen even in this expansion. And even if they may not be the highest item level, I feel like having being able to personalize so much of the items and the effects on the gear, I feel like that could mean that it's going to be powerful for a long time if they think anything similar to this expansion. Since we have, I know I'm still using my haste mastery with the socket tailoring items, especially now with corruption being a scroll. That suddenly became a lot more relevant for us, because when we can craft a 470 with the correct stats and the socket and put the corruption that you want, suddenly that's a really, really powerful item. And I would guess that they would do something similar for those, at least for some slots of the crafted items, perhaps only the ones that are BOP for the tailors themselves.
I also feel that I am getting some kind of classic vibes where, maybe you would have like a riding set where you wouldn't have boots that were as good, but you'd have like a bunch of movement speed effects on them, or you'd have a set that's like good for
Mm-hmm.
farming, but maybe isn't great for raid. So I could see maybe you have, a crafted boot and it like you have a crafting set and it has like one is movement speed, another one has like falling damage reduction, another one has like swim speed. Like I don't know, maybe you're farming, I don't know, you're doing stuff in Nashatar, and like the stats are like slightly not as good, but you just put them on for this outdoor content.
Yeah.
And then you swap back into your regular gear when you are min maxing your DPS in a raid.
Mm-hmm. I
Because
don't
some of
think.
these it's like, oh, like retain your weapon buff in a arena or battleground. It's like, well, you don't really need that if you're, raiding. You
Mm-hmm.
want that for like a very specific occasion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say I don't think they'll make the gear close to max item level if it's all BOEs, because that would mean that nobody should ever do any other content than just
Mm-hmm.
craft gear. But I could see that maybe one or two items, one or two slots for the different professions could become a BOE, which is maybe not max item level, but something close to it. So at least at the beginning, it would be very strong. I hope they do. I hope they do. Especially at the beginning of the expansion when most of us are running dungeons. I think having crafted gear is very, very useful. Maybe as one of the first epics that we may pick up or something.
Yeah, I also think that's why they removed all of the things like specific mob damage and like stat procs, because maybe they were concerned that that could eventually scale and like be too powerful. Um, and like they wouldn't want something to be better than raid gear just because it has like you could just like socket a bunch of damage boosts and then that could scale with
Mm-hmm.
weird builds.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of we've been highlighting a lot of videos by Rex Troy, and it's like he, finds things with like interesting combinations of
Yeah.
procs
Mm-hmm.
that infinitely scale, and like, you can sort of see Blizzard being like, oh, maybe we shouldn't like put more of these in because people will do the math and figure out these combinations.
Mm-hmm.
um but yeah, so that's what's up with professions.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we know that blacksmith, leatherworking, tailoring, I think engineering are getting recipes for things they can craft that are always needed for legendaries. So those professions won't feel like bad after people outgear their crafted items.
Yeah.
But it's like similar to what we're saying about legendaries. So much of the actual end game gear isn't available to test that it's hard for us to evaluate how strong the skier is because like none of the other systems have any items at this point.
I can see a cat ear.
Professions are like, yes, we have a cat ear, we have a cat head.
Yeah.
Yes, a cat. Such a good boy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's up with professions.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have some customization options.
Oh, yeah, this one's a funny one because we talked about it last week and I was so sure they would not do this. And then they did it.
We're talking about cats. Oh my god.
Yes, we are talking about cats. We are talking about druids and their forms. So we discussed this last week. We had some suspicion based on different things that were data mined that druids will probably be able to pick a tattoo, which will then also go over to their bear and cat forms. So if you pick to have a moon on your shoulder, that moon would be visible on your cat form and bear form as well. What we also discussed was the possibility of picking your artifact weapon skin from Legion as an actual permanent skin on your druid. And I remember saying that I don't think that will happen because it's a very specific transmog option, not really a real skin option. So I don't think they will let druids just pick and choose those. But it seems like now druids are confirmed to is it confirmed? Can I say confirmed?
Yeah, so they added this. Oh, you can't select it from the character creation screen, but the data is in place. It's like when we data mined the blood elf eyes, even though you couldn't put blue eyes on the in the actual game. Like the data is there. It's just not
Yeah.
up for players yet.
So it seems like if you did do your druid farms back in Legion for all the artifact weapons, the ones specifically that changes your form, you can now pick them as permanent forms. I know that I am very happy that I did my Druid Mage Towers, specifically the Feral Mage Tower ones, because they're not available anymore, if you never did them back then. This is, I don't know, this is really exciting. I did not expect them to allow this to happen because some of those forms stick out so much.
So basically, how we determine this from the data is that they had customization categories for like bear form and cat form, and these customization categories are next to things like ear color, skin color, all the other options we see on the selection screen. And then inside that like quote folder, they had different model IDs for various forms. And when we look at them in the model viewer, we see that these forms so far are for all of the Night Elf and Worgen bear and cat forms, as well as some of the Claws of Ursoc tints. So, we can extrapolate and say, well, if the Night Elf and Worgen are all in here, that means that the Horde races are going to be, part of the system too. And if the Claws of Ursoc is there, that means that for one tint, for one shape, that means that more of them will be there, and also the cat artifact. And this is really big because you don't need to transmog to your weapon. You can just select this and you can actually equip different weapons but keep the cool forms, and you can select your bear form and cat form tints separately.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, my hair is white, so my bear and cat are also white. So there's a lot of freedom of expression, which I think is really neat. No word on like the tattoo speculation we were doing because night elves are currently disabled on the alpha.
Mm-hmm.
So like I feel like they're going to be worked on next,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it would still be cool if you could customize your tattoos. I think that'd be fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the tattoo thing is also a really cool thing because it gives you a little bit of a uniqueness, right? You have something that uh, is representing you as a night elf, and then you change form, and you can still see that one thing which hasn't changed. It's still with you. It's like in like movies when they have like, let's say, or in fantasies, fantasy like books or whatever, where they have a human form, then they have an animal form, and then they still have the same eyes. You know, like you still see the details.
Yeah,
It's the same
that's what
person.
Malfurion has. He's got the same like
Yeah,
lightning stuff on his chest and
yeah,
arms
yeah.
as well as bear form.
Mm-hmm. So that'll be really interesting. And also, you pointed it out, which is a very good point too. If you could pick a skin for feral and pick a skin, for cat form, and then pick a skin for the bear form too, that means you can mix and match. So you can pick the
Mhm.
bear form from Mage Tower, and you can pick the bear form for the cat form. Wait, and you can pick the cat form from Mage Tower as well and combine
Mhm.
them because today you can't do that. You have to choose one
Right.
transmog. So as a Resta
So
Druid,
yeah.
for example, I can't look neon pink if I wanted
Right,
to.
because yeah, so this
I
just
have to be
opens like
feral.
way more options.
Yeah. So it's gonna be really cool.
I mean, I think you might even get some druids wanting to go back and you can't do mage tower tints, but they might want to go back and get other tints now that they feel they can use them in different
Mm-hmm.
specs.
Maybe they'll introduce some special Druid quest lines that specifically unlocks new skins.
Yeah, I mean that ties in super well with Ardenweald.
Does, yeah.
Especially with the Druids as well. Like you could have some like weird wicker bears and cats in there. You could
Mm-hmm.
have some more traditional like, elven nature forms. I think there's a lot of potential with Ardenweald.
Mm-hmm.
And with all the talk about like not spec fantasy but class fantasy, I think adding some more druid like forms would kind of be in the spirit of celebrating things that make your class unique. Like I know they keep going on that like Legion was so spec focused, but Legion was also really class focused with all, the class order halls, and there were a lot of class specific things in there, like, your class mount that you could get, or like the little perks tied to your order hall that all specs could do, like the rogues had the little like Throne of Thunder challenge they could do, and that wasn't dependent on a spec. So
Mm-hmm.
I think adding more stuff like that also is good for class identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true. I see a comment in the chat. To be honest, I still think it'll be spec locked. You can select the form, but unless in Feral or Guardian spec, you'll have the default form. We'll see, I guess. We'll see.
Right. I mean, like, do keep in mind that when you're like leveling a new character in Shadowlands, you don't really have a spec. You just you just
That's
are a
true.
class
That's
until
true.
level 10. So I think that they're trying to move away from spec specific things, but I mean, we'll see. I'm really excited to see this when Night Elves return on the alpha.
Mm-hmm. I think it's just a very
So
specific, special case for Druids because it is a transmog, but it specifically changed their form, which no other class has. No other class can transform into something else, which changes based on their transmog. And this was why I did not think it would be added as a default skin for Druids. But what the data is showing us is that it will indeed be possible.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm really excited to see this as well as Night Owls returning because a lot of people have been rightfully commenting that whenever we highlight options available in the dressing room, Night Elves have like the least amount of options. And I think that's because they're, being actively worked on, but like they don't really have a cool thing yet. Like, like Blood Elves have so many things with their jewelry, and, humans have jewelry, and like even the Void Elves now have their eyes. And the Night Elves so far are just like, okay, we've got like a hair color in the dressing room. So,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, speaking of the dressing room, we Blizzard polished more data, so our dressing room now shows more stuff.
Yep.
All of the dwarf options were a few weeks ago, including tattoos and new hairstyles are up. And the remaining blood elf options are in, such as facial hair, skin tone, and ear size. But sadly, the body jewelry option that was available in the tool last week is now gone. So that's sad.
Wait, why is it gone?
We don't know. It's gone. Like
Oh.
Blizzard removed it, so it's no
Ooh.
longer a customization option.
So we don't. Is it possible that we won't get them?
Yeah, it's possible. It's
Oh
possible. Like
no.
we could have the necklaces, but not the body jewelry.
Okay.
So that's
The
sad.
body jewelry was so pretty.
I know, and it worked on the guys too. Like it just fit
Yeah.
Blood Elves so well, and now it's gone.
Yeah. Maybe it's new raiding
So
gear. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but
yeah,
I think being completely naked and only having jewelry is great armor against very powerful monsters. I think it makes total sense.
there have been stranger things in WoW's laws of physics and what deals damage before. So I think that could work.
Yep, for sure. You will just blind the enemy and they're dead.
Griffin Lake RP are just like in Silvermoon, or like those AQ tops that like come built in with jewelry. It would be cool to see stuff
Hmm.
underneath.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Blood Elves do have a lot of options, so I don't know if they were like, yeah, like they sort of have more options than humans, maybe not do the body jewelry, but I would still like to, you know, more
Hmm.
is always better, and
Hmm.
people really like them.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I don't know.
the more the
I don't know if
better.
people are like, oh, like they have so many more options than Void Elves now. Why should, Void Elves be the premium allied race when, the Blood Elves can look exactly the same but have like necklaces and jewelry and all this other stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know if
I
they're
do
trying to
think.
like balance those.
Yeah, I do feel like what can you call them? Sister races. Like blood elves and void elves, and then you have night elves and nightborn. I do feel like the allied race counterparts should also like not be forgotten, but at the same time they are the newer one, which gives them a little bit of an edge. So maybe that's also why there's reason to give the old race a bit of more attention.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of everyone getting more attention. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be really cool if the Blood Elves got the gold jewelry, and then the Void Elves got silver versions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be interesting. Or like
Yeah.
if like we haven't seen much about Draenei, but yeah, that's another thing. Like they mentioned that Draenei could change the length of their tail.
Oh.
Like Lightforged
Mm-hmm.
Draenei players are probably going to be like, I have to do this stupid Argus faction to get this character. Like, why can't I modify my tail? So I wonder
Yeah.
if we're going to see more things develop like that, where the allied
Mm-hmm.
race gets something as well.
Maybe it's just a time thing. Maybe first give it to the old race, and then like with
Mhm.
time, when it's a bit less new and special, then the other race gets it too.
Yeah.
Maybe, not sure. And I can see how people are making fun of me saying more is always better. More grinding, more RNG. Okay.
More when it comes to fashion is better.
More options. More options.
Yeah.
Um, but
We
yeah.
also have new female Worgen eyes.
Yes, we
Uh,
do.
these come in a ton of colors, including red and purple.
Yep.
Uh, some eyes that are like bright colors, others that are more traditional,
Hmm.
some that have different colored eyes, and even blind eye options.
Yeah, I was surprised about the blind eye option.
It's sort of some of the colors are like really similar to the undeads, who also kind of have a blind option as well. Currently, Worgen are not available on the alpha, so they're getting their big like customization polish as well. So there'll
Hmm.
probably be more in the next build. We'll have to see.
High elf organs. Yep.
Yep. Hi, Elf. Everyone gets
Mhm.
blue eyes.
On the topic
So
of RNG, I do feel that Shadowlands is a direction taken towards a bit less RNG compared to what we have had. Um, little things like being able to choose PvP or Mythic Plus, not doing both because you want the RNG loot from both chests, the crafting, no longer random secondary stats, choosing, well, I guess we did have the guaranteed socket currently too, on the crafted items. But in general, I feel like Blizzard did listen, that the RNG was getting way out of hands. So I'm pretty positive, hopeful that we will have less RNG in Shadowlands, because RNG
Yeah.
is like, it is an RPG game after all, and RNG is a big fundamental way of how the game is played, even in Classic, right?
Hmm.
A lot of people talk about how they haven't seen a certain item drop for months,
Hmm.
and even when it does, it's one person out of 40 who gets that item.
Right.
But we don't want layers of RNG. RNG is okay, but
Right.
not layers of it, not endless of it, not RNG where it becomes impossible actually to even see the end result, because no one can get that best thing except this one lucky guy who logged in once and never logged in again.
Yeah, people like having checklists. And if you add too much
Checklists,
RNG,
yes, yes.
it doesn't like to a certain point, like you can extend the life of the checklist by adding hurdles, but then after a certain point you're just gonna like give up and be like,
Mm-hmm,
this isn't fun. Like
mm-hmm,
I like making progress on my
mm-hmm.
to-do list.
Yep, exactly. Checking off things, right?
Yeah.
Bad luck mechanics, exactly. And you could argue that, for example, this corruption system, if the scrolls were available from the beginning, that would be the bad luck protection, right? Because those who are
Hmm.
lucky wouldn't need to spend the echoes to buy them on the specific pieces that they want. And those who are not as lucky can then grind out the echoes to get the corruptions that they need. So if the corruption system had been like this since the beginning and balanced it a lot earlier, I think the corruption system actually would have worked pretty decently. It's a shame that this was done so late, because everyone's sick of corruptions now.
And people are sad when their corruption they're looking forward to is
All
not
getting
up
nerfed.
on. Yep. Or yes, or getting nerfed.
Yeah, it's like, fine, I can have full gushing runes. Wait, never mind.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I just wanted to like feel good and powerful for a little bit, and now I can't.
Yeah.
But yeah, another customization option, which was interesting, is we actually saw what initial look at what the eye colors are, the blue eye colors for the Void Elves and Blood Elves. And what's interesting is that yes, they both have three blue-eyed options, but they're slightly different colors. And if
Mm-hmm.
the blog Blizzard put together like last week was, clearly done in a rush. I mean, I'm glad they made the blog, but they had like Void Elves wearing Blood Elf underwear. Like you could tell it was sort of put
Put
together
together
really
really
fast.
fast. Yeah.
And
That was
in
fast.
that blog, they were highlighting eye colors, and
Mm-hmm.
they had the same blue eyes on the Void Elf and the Blood Elf.
Mm-hmm.
But in the data mining, um, they have different eyes, and all the Blood Elf ones are more like turquoise, while the Void Elf ones are like leaning more towards sapphire, like more of the true high elf color tint. And I'm like, oh, is this like a trick of lighting? Am I not used to it? But we looked at the textures, and like the color of the eyes, it's very apparent when you look at them, flattened out, and you see the colors used. The Void Elf ones are more like royal blue, like strict blue, while the Blood Elf ones are like more lighter and more this green blue color.
Mm-hmm.
So, which I think is interesting because the High Elves are hanging out in the Void Elf starting zone, and traditionally we're with the Alliance, so it makes sense why they have a slightly different blue than the Blood Elves. Maybe the Blood Elf blue is more just like, yeah, every race has blue eyes, while the Void Elves are more, a
A
nod
reason
towards High
behind it.
Elves.
Yeah.
Yeah. They all look great. They're all in the dressing room.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, um,
It's
they
it's
look
a very
fun.
interesting observation, because it's only been a week since they announced it, so
Yeah,
or since they confirmed it rather.
confirmed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I like we were saying before, maybe Blizzard will use this as a learning experience how to tackle other allied races that look really close to their original race. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Night Elves don't have a lot of customization yet, but I'm sure if they get a ton, people will be like, how come Nightborn have, like 3 skin colors still?
Yeah.
It's like, suppose Night Elves get tattoos. Like, right now, the argument is, well, a Nightborn has these cool, like, body tattoos, and that's what Night Elves don't have. But if Night Elves get tattoos, then it's to be like, oh, so, like, I'm just, like, a horde, less good Night Elf. You could see those things developing. Or if
Yeah.
Draenei get, like, head tails and different colors and, like, elaborate hairstyles, people are going to be like, oh, my Light Forged is kind of like a boring Draenei.
But you've got the cool golden tattoos, okay?
I know, but like, what happens if Draenei get, like,
Other
I don't
tattoos.
know, right, or like a
Yeah.
golden tattoo, and then you're like, oh, well, like Draenei now have tattoos in like gold, and Exodar purple and like
Mm-hmm.
blue and like spaceship pink, and I only have this in gold. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can sort of picture that
Mm-hmm.
dialogue coming about. So, uh,
But I
hopefully
spent
this was
time
like a
creating this
test run.
character.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I just say like hopefully Blizzard is like learning from how to handle the allied race, main race thing,
Mm-hmm.
and can apply that to others,
Mm-hmm.
you know, moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it won't be as bad with Zandalari and Trolls because like the Zandalari have such unique options that you can't get on Trolls. And they're still pretty different from what we've seen in like the Druid forms or like dinosaurs.
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
have enough unique things.
But that's
But
druids
for
only though, right? So other classes might still be lacking a bit.
see, but I mean they have I feel like they have like the distinct gold, like they're upright, they have the gold
No, yeah,
jewelry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Upright as well, actually.
So
That's a very good point. Wait, do normal trolls can they not pick to be upright?
no, they're just the orcs. There's actually been a big movement on Wowhead. People are all like upright undead, but now that you mentioned trolls too, yeah, it's like I feel like people are gonna ask for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't
So
think about it because I do remember the upright thing being a topic, but yeah, that was just for orcs. So
yeah.
yeah, no, that's a good point. I guess the Zandalari trolls are in that case the most unique allied race compared to all the others.
Yeah.
To its original race,
Yeah, and
so to speak.
Kultiras don't have a main race
Oh, that's
because
true. Okay,
they
so
were
that one
you
is the
yeah.
main one. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
I feel like Vulpera are like goblins, but they look different enough. However, mechanomes and gnomes, I feel like people are like upset with like mechanomes not really having customization or armor they can show off.
Yeah,
So, I don't know. I feel like they maybe will need something.
yeah, yeah. That's a good point. Volpera is also pretty unique, actually.
Yeah.
I want Volpera to be Alliance.
I know they're like so cute and fuzzy.
Yeah, they are.
Right Paw just picked his head up. He's like, I am fuzzy. I am a cat.
Oh my cat is sleeping completely out of it at the top of the tree. Wait, I'm gonna show her. There.
Nice.
Just completely out of it. Not in the cat tree, not in the pouch, just on top of the tree.
Nice.
Yeah, so I made a Volpera, fully white to look like her, and
Oh,
I wanted to name it Maya as well. It's so cute.
did the cat appreciate it?
I hope so. Cats can be quite difficult to please. Yeah.
Let's see.
Where were we?
I think we were at a good like break point if you wanted to thank subs, and then we had a few quick updates at the end, and then some
Oh,
official like classic esports thing that just came up I wanted to highlight like in the middle of the
oh.
show.
This is why we
Yeah.
have a live show, so we can update
Yep.
on live news. But yeah, before we go into that, let me give a quick shout out to Veroni, who subbed to the channel. Welcome,
Hey.
Veroni, and thank you very, very much for subbing. That's a name that I recognize from my community, actually. So good to see
Oh,
you.
nice.
Good to see you. So yeah, Warzone Gold Classic official tournament? Question mark. So what's this all about?
So Blizzard just made a post called "Introducing the World of Warcraft, a Classic Summer Bowl." And for the
Mm.
first time in WoW Classic, World of Warcraft Esports presents the Summer Bowl. It's a 10v10 Warzone Gulch tournament starting June 17th. Over the following 3 weekends, teams in North America and Europe will compete for a separate prize pool of USD 4,000 in each region. All games will take place on live servers for WoW Classic using the recently added War Games feature. Teams of 10 players will sign up for their regions. Tournaments split into 2 stages. They battle against each other using the War Games feature. And then total of 4,000, and this will signups close on 17th or 18th. And then the tournaments take place on the weekends of the 20th, 27th, and July 4th.
Gotcha.
So, which, the prize pool isn't huge, but I think it's notable that we finally have a official esports presence in WoW Classic. Because Blizzard has stayed out of rating and the race to world first. They just do MDI and AWC, and it's cool to see their new War Games technology being used for this. And maybe it will lead to even more esports things in WoW Classic if this goes well.
Yeah, that is actually really cool. The prize pool is small for a 10-man player group, especially as well. But considering Classic is such a different game to what retail, I mean, even retail is far from, perfect balancing. But I feel like there's so much limitation with Classic in terms of what classes you should play and what classes can do. And so it would feel a bit silly to put too much money into it. But it is still nice, and even just as a gesture to see this actually happen is really cool.
Yeah, you don't want something like Heroes of the Storm where you start off with the most lavish thing and your prize pool doesn't reflect the hype behind the game. But I will say that, I feel like with the streaming numbers on WoW being so much better than Heroes and community run things drawing in hype, I think that this could be promising for Blizzard. There's more of a precedent of classic events doing well.
For sure.
But I can see how if this is a brand new type of tournament for a game they haven't done anything with before, how it's easy to start small and then grow as you show promise, as opposed to starting really big and not living up to, expectations.
Oh, this is going to be really interesting.
Yeah. It ends on July 4th, which is US holiday. So it'll be interesting to see if people are tired or partying or out of it on that final weekend. But yeah, I guess we'll see.
So EU signups close on the 18th, NA signups close on the 25th, and the weekends are for the qualifiers respectively, and then the finals, are in the first week of July. That's cool. This is really good to see some kind of initiative from Blizzard to do something like this, because so far I think everything that's been Classic related has been community driven, right? Like the dueling tournaments, they've all been community driven. So it's cool to see Blizzard do something as well, and maybe like you said, maybe it's a question of to see whether it's good to invest into it, then maybe in the future the prize pools can be even bigger, because the prize pool is very, very small for 10 people.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's not just per competitor. It's you're splitting this among
you're splitting
many
it with
people.
10 people, and maybe one team has more than 10 people too, in case 1 or 2 people can't show up. So maybe a team is actually 12 or 13 people. So it's $600 a person or $700.
Yeah, it's you could just stream and do something fun on your stream and pull that same amount.
Yes, I highly recommend, if you're considering to enter this, to get your streams up on Twitch and stream whatever is allowed to be streamed. Don't stream if you're actually not supposed to. And then maybe you can at least get some nice and fun experience and exposure that way.
Yeah. So back to our final few quick updates. This was really popular. I didn't see it coming, but we knew there was the updated male Ardenweald set, and it looked a lot better than the original set. And this week Blizzard added a belt, which really tied the outfit together and made it look even nicer.
Yep, here it is.
So yeah, I think this is going to be the replacement set over the first version. It looks really nice.
So, what do you think? You think the first version was just some kind of fluke? Like it's not going
I
to
feel
stay?
like yeah, I feel like people just reacted really negatively to it,
Hmm.
and when they saw it like lined up next to the other sets, they're like, yeah, this doesn't really like fit the same vibe. So I think they're gonna reuse it for something else.
Okay. This is the green version, and then here I'm gonna show you guys the robe version in purplish. There it is.
Yeah, this is another system we don't know a lot about. Like, yes, obviously covenants are tested on the Shadowlands Alpha, but we don't really know much about like, do you get the other tints? Like, are there mount rewards? Are there pet rewards? You know, like, is anything tied to completing the
Mm-hmm.
like the special covenant quest line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the set is still very blue, even if it's a slightly different tint. It's interesting because when we looked at the set before, all the horns of all the different ones looked very blue, and we were wondering whether that's a mistake or not. But I feel like now that we see that the belt is also blue, and we have the slight blue in the glove piece too, that they are indeed meant to stay blue, even in a set which looks more green.
So I think this is, like I said, a big improvement over the other one, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we will, you know, be able to understand where this armor comes from very soon.
Yep. And
Speaking of armor,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, it's okay. You stole that one. You keep it. Speaking of
uh,
armor.
the character creation screen always shows you like a sample character wearing pretty basic armor,
Mm-hmm.
and they got a super fashionable upgrade for most classes in this week's build. So a lot of them are wearing armor sets from
Mm-hmm.
early Legion, or like one of the priests has the Uldir set, and it just looks like way more epic, way more detailed, and it makes you feel like a lot more hype creating your character. So with like the new armor paired with the fancier UI, how it looks more modern,
Mm-hmm.
um, it feels pretty good.
Yes, it really does. Like the contrast is so huge.
Yeah, it's so
All of these
modern.
classes being listed here, we see the new version, like this one, with a nice armor and everything, and then here you see how it looks today.
Yeah, like Monk is really noticeable. Like they don't even have shoulders.
Yep.
So, some of these are not yet done, like Death Knight, not sorry, Demon Hunter and Druid. But you know, maybe this week they will be done. And like this was surprisingly, I think outside of corruption, this was like the number two most popular article of the last week.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sort of surprising, but it is what it is.
Yep.
People, yeah, like this is the very first thing you see, so I think making a good first impression is key.
Mm-hmm. I think it looks really good, and it's the whole picture which just looks so much cleaner. Obviously, with all the buttons being on the sides, picking faction, picking race, and then picking the class as well, and then the armor on top of it. It just feels more. I guess, like you said, more like a unique thing to your own class, and looking powerful, looking epic.
Yeah, it makes you feel hype. It doesn't
Hype,
feel like,
yes.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like you're wearing some like basic BB armor.
Mm-hmm. But then you log in, and then you look like baby armor, anyways.
Yep. Ah,
You don't get away from it.
I got him. We're ending the show
Oh.
soon. Come here, baby. There we go.
Brightpaw's going to join us. Hi, Brightpaw.
Yes.
Oh.
So for our final topic, some models received updates which are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the first is that the Arbiter had a cavity in her chest, and previously it had this sort of dull looking stone in it. But now it is full of and kind of leaking this blue glowy effect, which we think is anima power. So that's very interesting with the symbolism, especially because the jailer also has a cavity in his chest, and it looked empty. So it's like he's the one stealing the anima. So is there something where like the Arbiter had too much anima power and he didn't have any? Was he like starving for anima? But she looks really cool with this sort of blue effect radiating from her chest.
I'll show you guys the difference here. So we have this one, which is the old model. Is it also a change of posture, by the way, or is that just random?
The posture was just like the posture was added since that screenshot was taken.
Okay.
So that the posture isn't like new.
No, gotcha. So if you notice on her chest, the new version looks like... Oh, no, it doesn't look like us. It doesn't look like me and chest. I mean, me and Park. Here it is. Here is the chest. So you can see the potential anima power there.
Yep.
And the chest of the Arbiter.
And then the other thing we saw was, I think last Tuesday, I wrote an article highlighting the Revendreth Deathwarg mount, which looked cool, but the mount special was just like a bear, so it just was sort of like a vampire bear. And they made the mount special more interesting in this build. So it like throws a bone on the ground and digs at it and plays fetch as the mount special.
Mm-hmm.
And it fits the vibe of Revendreth a lot better.
Yep.
And it looks more like a weird, like very enthusiastic vampire puppy that's sort of cute and terrifying at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And that sort of gravestone as a seat looks really cool.
Yeah. So happy about the dead bone it's picked up.
Yeah. Just don't summon a battle pet next to it. Might eat it.
No.
Not safe. Brightpaw has to go safe as well. Yeah. Oh.
Like not bothered by this death work.
Yeah. When will the game be available?
We don't know.
Yeah, question in the chat. We don't know. We think that the release date was meant to be announced tomorrow as part of the presentation stream that Blizzard was planning, but that has now been postponed until we don't know when, probably later this month. And in connection with that, we think the release date of Shadowlands will be revealed. Yep.
So that's about it for topics. Brightpaw has joined us to say goodbye.
Yeah. Brightpaw's like, I know that the show is ending. Okay, I read the show notes. Can I get a cat treat now?
He did read this. I got these veggie wraps as part of lunch, and I turned around to give him cat food, and I found him carrying away one of the veggie wraps in his mouth. So I don't know if he deserves a cat treat after stealing my human lunch. And being a bad boy and playing with it. Why are you hiding your head in my dress? Now he's all shy. I'm sorry I told the whole stream that you like that you like veggie wraps.
Yeah, that was supposed to be a secret. Now I need to hide under your arm. I'm hiding now. Annie, my sister wants to see your cat. She's still there, but she's turned around so you can see her tail and one of her back legs. There. So that's her back paw. You can see the toe beans, and then that's her tail. She turned around. She is very tired, apparently.
Hard life.
Yep. It's a difficult life being a cat, okay?
Yeah.
Have to eat, have to sleep, have to play around, have to wait for human to be done with their computer things.
Have to look cute, have to deal with the human taking pictures of you all the time.
Yeah, imagine having a paparazzi on you all the time.
You can't just sleep because this human is like waking you up and cooing and then being like, oh no, I woke you up, go back to sleep, I'm taking a picture.
Yep. And my other cat is, I don't know, hiding somewhere else. But yeah, it is time for us to wrap up for today's show, or this week's show, rather. We will be back again next week. as usual, same time. In case we do have some old viewers here who hasn't seen the show for a couple weeks, we do have a new show day, which is Mondays now instead of Thursdays. We felt like Mondays feel better because oftentimes we get a build or something that happens on a Thursday, which forces us to have either an awkward show or a stressful show or a postponed show, like we did when the Shadowlands Alpha came out. If you guys remember, we temporarily changed it to Mondays. So to avoid that, we are just sticking to Mondays, and just make sure that anything that is notable is mentioned here, so you guys can keep track of everything World of Warcraft related, even if you may not be able to play as much as you can, or as much as you want.
Yep.
As much as you want. I find myself, like, I remember when different times of me taking time off of playing WoW, I still find it interesting to read about updates and things.
Oh, yeah, definitely people are very excited about reading about things, especially with
even
the
if you don't
pandemic
play.
making people at home. Like, people are reading a greater variety of things than they did before. So that's kind of cool.
I remember when I had a longer break during Cataclysm, since I was taking some time in Spain to learn some Spanish. And I did not have a computer at all, actually. I think I might have had a laptop, which was terrible. So I was not playing any games over there. And I remember still using my phone to browse, like, let's see what news, let's see what's going on now. What's the latest things? And I remember it was the time of the legendary staff as well. And I was quite sad about that because...
Oh, yeah, I can see the cast is more lucky you'd want that.
Yeah. So when I came back, it was the tier after that. So I had to, of course, go back and... complete that, but it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. The interest was still very, very high, especially because you were able to have 3 people progressing the same quest. So
yeah, that was good.
Yeah, so even a lot of other people who wanted to progress the same quest or a similar quest, like in a different stage, would be interested in joining. So it wasn't too bad. It was a nice experience. And I remember on my first week back, and I killed Ragnaros on normal, the mount dropped. Even though it was a very low drop chance. So I was one of the first people to get that from like a random drop. Of course, it was 100% drop from heroic.
Congrats.
That was fun. That was fun. But yes, enough nostalgia talk. Enough cats apparently too. Time for us to wrap up today's show, and we'll see you guys next week, same time.
Yep, we can do the high five, I think.
Yes.
Oh, ow.
Maybe.
Okay.
Okay.
Clearly he did not want to be around
the
the high five.
Okay.
And I didn't want my leg to be around either. But yeah, I think we can do the high five. I have a free hand, so I can do the sound effect this time.
And I have to say again, that dress in pastel looks beautiful. Very, very, very sweet dress.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's really happy.
Looking fancy.
Right, Paul likes it too.
Yes, he does, for sure.
Yes.
All right, you can do the countdown.
All right. Yep. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. High five done.
Yay, we
Show
did it.
done. And we'll be back next week, same time. See you then.
Yep. See you guys.
Stay safe. Wash your hands. Care about everyone around you. Treat others the way that you want to be treated.
Yep. Happy Pride. Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.